If I told you that one financial deal signed this year could quietly influence how attractive Nigerian stocks look, whether foreign investors decide to invest here or stay away, where interest rates go over the next few years, and even how much investors are willing to pay for some of your favorite companies, you'd probably assume I'm talking about a major CBN policy or maybe a new budget. But I'm not. I'm talking about a financing deal that most Nigerians barely even noticed. A $5 billion agreement that could end up being one of the most important financial stories of the year for investors. Now, before you click away because this sounds like another government debt story, I want you to stay with me for some time, because this isn't really a video about government borrowing. It's a video about something much more important: your future investment returns. And by the end of this video, I think you understand why two intelligent investors can look at this exact same deal and one sees disaster while the other sees opportunity. Now, before I break down the details of this deal and what it means for we as investors, do all to smash the like button, guys. Subscribe to the channel. The goal is to hit 100,000 subscribers, and only you can help us achieve that goal. All right, guys, have you done it? Have you done it? Let's jump in. Now, before we can answer whether this deal is good or bad for investors, we first need to answer a much simpler question. Why did Nigeria even need a deal like this in the first place? You see, if you have been following the news, you have probably heard people say Nigeria's debt keeps growing, and that's true. But that's not actually the number that gets my attention. The number that makes me stop and think is this. As of 2026, more than half of the federal government's revenue, which is 53.7% to be exact, goes towards paying interest on existing debt. Let that sit for a second with you. Picture your own salary before rent, before feeding, before school fees. More than half of it's already gone. And not because you spent it on anything new, just because you are paying interest on money borrowed in the past. That's roughly where the federal government sits today. Now, does that mean Nigeria is broke? Not necessarily. Nigeria's debt to GDP ratio, projected at 32.3% for 2026, isn't even particularly high by global standards. Plenty of countries carry more. A country can have real debt and still manage it effectively. So the question isn't really about how much debt Nigeria has. The question is whether it can comfortably finance that debt while still running the country. And on that second question, the picture gets a lot more uncomfortable, because more than half of your income going to interest alone doesn't leave much room to breathe. Now, here's where it gets even more complicated. Nigeria doesn't just need Naira to cover this gap. It needs dollars. Dollars strengthen external reserves, supports confidence in the economy, and cover obligations that have to be paid in foreign currency. Normally, when a government needs dollars, it has a few options: borrow from international institutions, issue a Eurobond to global investors, or raise money through additional government debt. The problem is none of those are cheap right now, and the more expensive borrowing gets, the more government starts looking for other ways to raise money. That's exactly where this $5 billion deal comes in. Earlier this year, Nigeria entered a financing arrangement with First Abu Dhabi Bank to unlock up to $5 billion in dollar funding. Instead of raising the money through a conventional Eurobond, the government pledged some of its existing bond as security, giving lenders economic rights over those bonds in exchange for cash. Now, you don't need to understand every legal detail of how that structure works. What matters is this: Nigeria found another way to access billions of dollars without going through a traditional sovereign bond sale. And there's one more detail worth knowing. This kind of deal isn't classified the same way as normal government borrowing. It's structured as a liquidity support instrument, which means it can stay off the traditional debt headline entirely. It may not even show up in the debt to GDP number everyone watches. That's 32 point something percent I mentioned earlier. It might not even show up there. Now, from the government side, that has obvious advantages, but it's also exactly why this deal has attracted attention. Market observers have pointed out that structured deals like this one tends to create more opacity and raise real questions about creditor priority, and how sustainable the underlying debt actually is, even when it doesn't show up in the headline figures. Nobody is saying that automatically it makes it a bad deal. They are saying there is more happening beneath the surface than the headline suggests. And that's exactly why this story is worth paying close attention to, because whether this becomes one of Nigeria's smartest financing moves or one of its costliest mistakes won't be decided by the deal itself. It will be decided by what Nigeria does with the time this deal has bought it. To understand that, we need to ask a better question. Has another country tried something like this before? Now, fortunately, Nigeria isn't the first country to find itself in this position. A government under pressure, foreign reserves under pressure, investors losing confidence. And all of a sudden, injections of billions of dollars that promises to buy the country, some breathing room comes in. History has seen this movie before. The question is, how did it end? Now, let's start with the success story. Just 2 years ago, Egypt found itself in a remarkably similar position. The country was battling a foreign exchange crisis. Its currency was under immense pressure. Investors' confidence was fading, it was going away. And like Nigeria today, it desperately needed dollar liquidity. Then came a lifeline. In early 2024, the United Arab Emirates announced a $35 billion investment package centered around the Ras El Hekma coastal development. Now, on the surface, it looked like a massive investment deal, but economically, it achieved something much bigger. It immediately injected billions of dollars into Egypt's financial system. Suddenly, the government had something it hadn't had in a very long time, which is time. Now, here's the important part. The money itself didn't solve Egypt's problem. What mattered was what Egypt did after it received that money. You see, within weeks, the government allowed a major adjustment in the Egyptian pound. Instead of continuing to defend an unsustainable exchange rate, it kept its IMF reform program moving. It used the breathing room to begin addressing the underlying pressure that had created the crisis in the first place. In other words, the liquidity that came from the UAE bought them time, but the reforms are what gave investors confidence that the time wouldn't be wasted by the Egyptian government. That's why many analysts today don't see the Ras El Hekma deal, I hope I pronounced that correctly, as the solution. They see it as the bridge that made the solution possible. Now let's compare that with another country, Sri Lanka, because this is where the story takes a very different turn. Before its financial crisis exploded in 2022, Sri Lanka also received external financing and various forms of liquidity support. Again, the money bought the country time, but unlike Egypt, that time wasn't utilized to make the difficult adjustments quickly enough. The country delayed meaningful fiscal reforms. Its external imbalances continued to worsen. Foreign reserves, kept falling. Eventually, confidence disappeared in the country altogether. And once confidence goes, guys, everything starts breaking at the same time. Currency of the country weakened, borrowing becomes even more expensive, investors pull their money out of the country, and eventually Sri Lanka defaulted on its debts. Imagine the Nigerian government defaulting on FGM bonds. Now I want you to notice something interesting. The money that came in wasn't really the difference. Both countries found people willing to provide liquidity for them. The difference was what happened after the money arrived. One government treated the liquidity as a bridge to solve their problem, the other treated it as a delay, and that's the question Nigeria is now facing. Not whether this $5 billion coming from Abu Dhabi is good or bad, but whether it's buying time or simply postponing a much bigger problem. Because if history teaches us anything, liquidity can solve today's cash problem, even for you personally, but it can never solve tomorrow's policy problem or your own problem if you don't know how to manage money or change some of the bad habits that you change. And that's exactly where this becomes relevant to us as investors, because depending on which path Nigeria follows, the impact on the Nigerian stock market could be completely different. Now, looking at both stories, the question is, where does Nigeria fit? You see, the honest answer is we can already see pieces of both countries in us. Let's start with the similarities to Egypt. Just like Egypt, did in 2024, Nigeria isn't waiting until it completely runs out of options before trying to raise dollar liquidity. This $5 billion facility is designed to strengthen external reserves, support confidence in the economy, and reduce pressure on the foreign exchange rate market. At the same time, we have also seen regulators trying to strengthen the financial system itself through new banking capital reforms. Whether those reforms are enough is a separate conversation. But the point is this: there are signs that policymakers are trying their best to use this breathing room to improve the system rather than simply survive another month. That's the encouraging side of the story. But then there's the other side, and this is where I think investors need to pay close attention to. More than 53% of the federal government's revenue is still going towards interest payments alone. Inflation remains high. 15% is not the lowest, it's still high. Monetary policy rate is still sitting at 26.5%. And because borrowing remains expensive, the government is increasingly relying on more creative financing ways to raise money. Like this one, they used to access liquidity. Again, that doesn't automatically make this a bad deal, but it does tell you something very important. Nigeria still has very little room for mistakes when it comes to policies. And just like we saw in Sri Lanka, liquidity can only buy Nigeria time. It doesn't remove the need for difficult economic decisions and the government themselves improving on their spending and stop spending carelessly. So today, I don't think Nigeria looks exactly like Egypt, and I don't think it looks exactly like Sri Lanka either. I think we are somewhere in the middle. This deal has given the country, an opportunity. Whether it becomes a success story or a money story for the market depends on what happens over the next couple of years. But here's the interesting part, guys, and strangely, nobody's even talking about it. Most people think the biggest question is whether Nigeria will eventually pay this financing. As an investor, I actually think that's a wrong question. The question I'm asking is this: will this deal eventually change investors' behavior? Because that's what determines stock market returns. Think about your own money for a second. If someone offered you a government treasury bill paying almost 20% with very little risk, how excited would you be to buy a Nigerian stock instead? You'll probably not be very excited, because for you to leave something that is relatively predictable, there is little to no risk in treasury bills, and offering you solid returns, to go and put it in the stock market that might also offer you similar returns, 20% or maybe 30%. If you compare the risk, you see that there is more risk in you putting money in the stock market. So you rather just put money in T-bills and relax about the market, and this can affect the performance of the stock market. Right now, most of us already know that Nigerian investors can earn roughly 18% on long-term federal government bonds. Even you can earn as much as 22%. You have around 20% to 22% on some OMO bills, and as much as 20% on certain treasury bills, depending on the tenor. That's incredibly high returns for the stock market to beat. Every company listed on the Nigerian exchange is competing against those returns for investors' attention, which means this $5 billion deal only becomes truly bullish for stocks if it helps change that environment, if it succeeds in improving confidence in the country, stabilizing the naira, reducing pressure on inflation, and eventually allowing interest rates and bond yields to move much more lower. Then suddenly the equation changes. Those guaranteed returns begin to fall. Institutional investors start looking elsewhere for better opportunities and return, and quality businesses become much more attractive again. But if interest rates stay high, bond yields remain very high, Nigeria does not utilize this opportunity properly, and investors can continue earning around 20% with relatively low risk, then many stocks will continue struggling to justify higher valuations. And that's why this deal matters so much. Not because of the $5 billion itself, but because of what it could eventually do to the benchmark every Nigerian investor uses, especially institutions, whether they realize it or not. Now, bringing everything together, here are three things I think every Nigerian investor after this deal should be watching closely. The first one is, are bond yields starting to fall? Number two, is the naira becoming more stable? And number three, are policymakers actually using this breathing room to implement meaningful reforms? Because those three indicators will tell you far more about the future of the Nigerian stock market than the financing deal itself ever will. If you found value in this video, guys, do well to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment as well, telling me what you think about this deal. There's also a link to join my WhatsApp channel. That's where I drop real-time market updates, what I'm watching in the market, and overall insights. And until next time, my colleagues, don't forget to stay sharp, stay safe, and invest wisely. Deal.